When I first heard about weird things happening at our cabin, I was maybe 7 years old. Weird things like chickens missing, chickens ending up on the cabin's roof headless, and also goats missing. Our cottage was located in the Appalachian region. There were acres of forest around, and I loved it there. No annoying car sounds, no disturbing bright lights, and lastly, no people. You could be completely alone without anyone bothering you. You could do anything you want without anyone telling you that you can't. It had one big house called the main house and a smaller building for storage. As a kid, I went there every summer. I wanted to spend even more time there than just a couple of weeks in the summer. But at that time, it was not possible. Living there was my biggest dream as a kid. As a teenager, I was, well, you could say disturbed, but I prefer unique. I enjoyed spending time in the forest, and the best time for being there was at night. I loved the forest day and night. I loved animals, living or dead, as death is a part of life you just have to accept. And that's why people thought that I was disturbed. I wanted to live in our cabin in the woods, all by myself. A couple of years later, I turned 18 and finally was able to move into that cottage. It was awesome. I could walk in the forest anytime I wanted. I had many pets and farm animals: chickens, goats, 2 cats, and a guard dog. I built a coop for the chickens and an enclosure for the goats. I loved it there. Until I started hearing these weird noises coming from outside. I kept hearing this scratching sound every night. My dog heard it too, and he usually barked a few times, and it stopped. It was weird. There were no signs of scratching when I checked the porch out when it was morning. I was a tiny bit scared. Not much, because I loved the forest around my property, and I was quite sure that it was just some animal trying to come inside the house. One day, I was going to feed the animals, and then I saw them. Scratch marks on the garage building's main entrance. They were huge. I had seen scratch marks made by a bear before, but these were different. The door was maybe 2 meters high and 70 centimeters wide. There were 3 scratches made with what looked like a claw or something like that. They were 5 centimeters wide and went from the top of the door to the bottom. At first, I thought it was a bear, or that's what I kept telling myself to not freak out. In reality, I knew it couldn't have been a bear. The next night, I couldn't fall asleep, and I started hearing scratching again. My heart was beating fast, and I started to sweat. I was terrified of what was scratching outside. I went and got my gun. I had a shotgun left behind by my grandfather, who loved to hunt. It was old, but I kept it clean and practiced shooting with it. I peeped through my curtains, and there was this dark, weird-looking figure standing by the door to my garage. I thought it was a bear and was relieved, but then it turned and looked in my direction. I got spooked and closed the curtains. What I saw couldn't have been a bear. Standing like a human, it had glowing yellow eyes. That's all I could see before I got spooked. I went to bed shaking. I was grabbing and cuddling the shotgun. I was terrified. I felt like a baby scared of the woods cuddling a shotgun. What a pussy, I thought. This time my dog didn't bark. Weird. I remember waking up to the sun rising and shining through the curtains. It was morning. I thought, how could I fall asleep? All my animals could be gone, eaten by the thing outside. I quickly rose up, changed my clothes, and went outside to check the animals. All the chickens were there, and they were doing well. Then I checked the goats, and one was missing. They were screaming like hell. They were obviously spooked by something. Then I checked my dog. He was inside with me all night, but I had to check since he usually barks when the scratching is happening, and this time he didn't. There he was smiling and wagging his tail. He seemed normal. Later that day, I found a goat's head impaled by a pine branch. Rest of the goat's body was scattered around my yard, and I found its limbs severed and in different places. All the body parts were chewed. They were torn apart by something and eaten, although not completely. It was weird. I wanted to get the hell out of there, but that was my home, and it had been in my family for ages. I went inside and tried researching the creature online, but nothing. Then I remembered that there was this cabinet in the storage building that I was not allowed to look inside as a kid. My eyes widened as I realized that there must be something that could help. I went inside the storage, and there it was, the cabinet. It looked older than I remembered. The wood was rotting, and the cabinet doors almost fell when I opened it. It had these weird objects inside it. They looked like miniature goat heads, small and shrunken down. I got shivers going down my spine as I saw a box that had a goat's head symbol on it and some text, but it was so old that it had worn off. I opened the box, and there was a book and a notepad inside. I opened the book, and there was a picture of this creature that I had been seeing. There was a text saying, if you see K on this property, you must sacrifice 1 goat to it every week on Saturdays at AM. If you don't, it will try to get inside. If it does get inside, it will take you. Name of the creature was one off. What the hell? I said out loud even though I was alone. I read more of the book, and there were many pictures of the creature. In different places of the yard, there was this page on the creature, and it revealed that my family had been seeing the creature for many years. Its name was written in old letters, Kierik. I had thought it was a skinwalker, but I read many stories on skinwalkers, and it definitely was not a skinwalker. It was something else. The notepad contained instructions on how to do the sacrifice and every sacrifice they had made from 1919 to 2001. That's when I moved in. I had not made any sacrifices as I didn't know about it. I was terrified of making sacrifices to some creature who could easily kill me. I had this thought about, why didn't my family tell me about this? I wanted to get the fuck out, but I didn't because it was my family home. That day very conveniently happened to be Saturday. I had to make the sacrifice. The instructions were clear. I had to take one goat with me to the middle of the woods and leave it on a stone that was placed there by my great-great-grandfather. I had to wait there until Kierik took it and went back to the darkness. I had to kneel before it. The instructions said that if you look at Kierik taking the goat, it will take you as well. That night I was anxious and was pacing around my house. Clock was around 1:30 as I started preparing. I put on my boots, took my shotgun and went outside. It was cold and the wind was howling. It was raining a little, and I went to the goat pen and took one goat with me, the oldest goat I had. I said my goodbyes to the goat and told him that he was going to be okay. I don't know how I would handle the sacrifice, as this goat was mine for 3 years. I had it before I moved here, but it had to be done. Then I started walking towards the woods. I had seen this spot in the woods before, so I knew where to go. It was pitch black, and all I could hear was the rain and wind. It was so dark out there that I tripped a couple of times on some branches. I reached my destination. I placed the goat there and told him the last goodbyes. Then I took a few steps back, kneeled and waited. I placed my head on the ground. After what felt like 3 hours, I heard stomping and tree branches snapping. It was distant but coming closer. All of a sudden, it was so close that the ground was shaking, and the tree branches were falling around the area. I started to hear this heavy breathing. I started to shiver. I was petrified. I almost could not breathe. Then I felt a warm breath on my neck and heard Kierik sniffing me. Its breath smelt like rotting meat. What the fuck was going on? I thought. Then it let out the scariest, earth-shaking and eardrum-piercing scream. I heard it picking up the goat, and it opened its mouth. I could tell that by the smell that appeared out of nowhere. The smell of rotting flesh. I heard him chew a couple of times, and then it came over to me. Kierik picked me up. It was strong. It felt like my body would snap in half. I was shaking and started to panic. I opened my eyes and saw its face. It was monstrous, a goat's head with horns that were snapped roughly in half. It had sharp teeth and yellow eyes that were looking directly in my soul. I screamed. I started to wiggle, and then I fell to the ground. It screamed. I started to run back to the house. As I ran, I looked back, and Kierik was just standing at the site of the sacrifice. Then it started running towards me. I ran for my life. I tripped a couple of times, but got back up. It was a life or death situation. I tripped once more, and I broke my ankle when I fell, and it hurt like hell. It felt like I couldn't run anymore, but I had to. I was exhausted and ready to give up, but finally, I reached my house, got in and locked the door. Then I went and grabbed my shotgun and looked out the window. Kierik was standing outside at the edge of the woods. I couldn't see him properly, but the outline was there. I decided that it was time to go. I started packing, and when I was ready, it was already morning. I packed my bags in the truck, took all the animals that could fit in the truck, and said goodbyes to the property. I couldn't handle this anymore. As I was saying goodbyes to the property, I found a goat's head sitting in front of the garage. I took it as a warning that I had forgotten to make the sacrifices for it, a warning that said you're next. I went to my truck and drove off. I couldn't stop thinking about last night, and as I turned to the road that took me away from there, I saw a goat that was placed on a tree branch. It was impaled by the branch, and it was definitely placed there by Kierik. I felt horrible as I thought, can I even escape? It was clearly following me, and that full body of a goat impaled by a tree. This definitely meant that I was next.